0300 hours, Gulf of Oman. The world is asleep. But here, in the strategic chokepoint of the Strait of Hormuz, the night is alive. This is the jugular vein of the global oil supply, a narrow channel of water where geopolitical tensions simmer at a constant boil. Patrolling these volatile waters is the tip of the American spear, the USS Stout, an Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer, a 9,000-ton behemoth of gray steel and advanced technology, a floating fortress designed for one purpose: power projection. But tonight, that projection has been met with a deafening silence. At precisely 3:17 Zulu time, the Stout's automatic identification system transponder, its electronic heartbeat broadcast to global maritime traffic, went dead. Not intermittent, not corrupted, it vanished from every screen, from NAVCENT headquarters in Bahrain to the Pentagon's National Military Command Center. One moment, a symbol of absolute naval dominance was executing a routine freedom of navigation transit. The next, it was a ghost, a void on the map. Initial assessments at Fifth Fleet were a frantic scramble against disbelief. Communications failure? A catastrophic engineering casualty? These are warships built with triple redundancy. Total, instantaneous silence is a scenario so unlikely it borders on the impossible. Every attempt to raise the Stout on any frequency, from high-frequency radio to secure satellite data links, was met with nothing but static. The silence was the first sign, the first chilling indicator that this was not a malfunction. It was an event. As precious minutes bled into an hour, a far more sinister picture began to emerge from the shadows of the intelligence world. Signals Intelligence, or SIGI-NT, listening posts, had been monitoring the strait, as they always do. They are the unseen ears of the fleet. A deep dive analysis of acoustic data from the moments preceding the Stout's disappearance isolated a transient, anomalous sound, a high-frequency spike, barely audible above the cacophony of commercial shipping. It was the distinct acoustic signature of a torpedo activation, a whisper of death from the deep. This wasn't just a missing ship anymore. This was a potential kill. The Pentagon, now fully alerted, fast-tracked the analysis. Cross-referencing the torpedo signature with known regional threats yielded a single, terrifying match. The sound profile was consistent with a Hoot-class supercavitating torpedo, an Iranian weapon. But the launch platform was even more disturbing. The faint, ultra-low frequency hum, detected just seconds before the torpedo launch, matched the unique acoustic fingerprint of Iran's deadliest asymmetrical asset, a Ghadir-class midget submarine, a vessel designed for one mission: to lie in silent ambush in the shallow, cluttered waters of the Persian Gulf and kill American warships. The USS Stout hadn't just vanished. The evidence pointed to a horrifying conclusion. It had been deliberately and successfully hunted. The war drums began to beat in Washington. The immediate, frantic priority was search and rescue. But a second, shadow priority was now active: search and destroy. The entire U.S. Fifth Fleet, a sprawling armada of carriers, cruisers, and destroyers, was placed on the highest possible state of alert. A submarine red alert was declared across the entire theater of operations. Every anti-submarine warfare, or ASW, asset in the region was being scrambled. P-8 Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft lifted off from airbases in Oman and Qatar, their fuselages packed with sonobuoys. MH-60R Seahawk helicopters, the Navy's premier submarine hunters, were spooling up on the decks of every available warship. Hunter-killer submarines already patrolling the depths were being retasked, ordered to sprint towards the last known position of the Stout. They were no longer just searching for survivors. They were hunting a ghost, an Iranian submarine that had just demonstrated the unthinkable, that it could reach out and cripple the most powerful navy in the world. And it had vanished without a trace. The Ghadir-class is not a leviathan of the deep like an American Virginia-class or a Russian Akula. It is a piranha, a 95-foot-long coastal submarine displacing a mere 120 tons. It is designed specifically to exploit the unique, nightmarish acoustic environment of the Persian Gulf. The Gulf's shallow depths, variable salinity layers, and incredibly high volume of commercial traffic create a sonar operator's worst-case scenario. It's like trying to hear a whisper in the middle of a rock concert. And in this chaos, the Ghadir thrives. Its small size, diesel-electric propulsion, and rubberized anechoic coating make it exceptionally difficult to detect on passive sonar. It doesn't hunt in the open ocean. It waits. It nestles into the seabed clutter near a high-traffic shipping lane, masking its own acoustic signature with the noise of a dozen oil tankers and container ships. It is an ambush predator, perfectly evolved for its environment. The Islamic Republic of Iran Navy, or IRIN, knows it cannot compete with the U.S. Navy in a conventional, blue water conflict. Their strategy is one of asymmetric warfare and anti-access/area denial, or A2/AD. The goal is not to defeat the U.S. Navy, but to make the cost of operating in the Persian Gulf so high, so bloody, that Washington will hesitate to intervene. The Ghadir-class submarine is a cornerstone of this doctrine. It is a deniable weapon. Small, stealthy, and deployed in numbers, an attack from one can be easily blamed on a rogue element, or denied entirely, creating a fog of war and political indecision that Iran can exploit. Let's reconstruct the likely sequence of events based on the fragmented intelligence. The USS Stout is on a southbound transit through the Strait of Hormuz, maintaining a standard patrol speed and sensor posture. Its AN/SQQ-89 sonar suite is active, but the sheer noise of the surrounding environment limits its effective range. Lying motionless on the seabed, 5 miles away, is an IRIN Ghadir-class submarine. Its commander has been waiting for days, monitoring American patrol patterns. He has his target. Using only passive sensors, he acquires a firing solution. He doesn't need to be perfect, he just needs to get his weapon in the water. The outer torpedo tube doors open with a barely perceptible hydraulic hiss. A burst of compressed air launches the torpedo, a Al-Fajr model, a reverse-engineered heavy-hitting weapon. For the first few hundred meters, it glides silently, unpowered, to prevent its launch transient from being detected. Then, its engine ignites, and it accelerates towards its target. By the time the sonar operators aboard the Stout hear the telltale sound of an inbound torpedo, it is already too late. The destroyer's phalanx, CIWS, can engage airborne threats, but it's useless against an attack from below. The torpedo impacts the Stout below the waterline, near the aft engineering spaces. The 500-pound warhead rips through the unarmored hull, causing catastrophic flooding and likely knocking out all power and propulsion. The ship goes dark and silent in seconds. Back in Washington, the scenario is no longer a hypothesis. It's the leading and most terrifying theory. The White House Situation Room is activated. The president is briefed by the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The implications are staggering. This is a direct act of war by Iran against a United States naval asset. It's a modern-day Pearl Harbor on a smaller, but no less significant, scale. The order is given. The Fifth Fleet is to transition from a search and rescue operation to a full-scale anti-submarine warfare campaign. The official designation is Operation Silent Fathom. The unofficial mission objective is retribution. Find the Ghadir and sink it. But as the first P-8 Poseidon arrives on station, dropping a pattern of sonobuoys into the choppy waters where the Stout was last seen, a new, confounding piece of information arrives. A satellite monitoring emergency frequencies detects a faint, intermittent signal. It's broadcasting on a U.S. Navy emergency channel, and its encryption handshake identifies it as coming from the USS Stout. It's a distress beacon, but it isn't broadcasting an SOS or a location. It's transmitting a tight beam burst of corrupted data, a repeating cycle of noise that NSA cryptanalysts can't immediately decipher. The ghost ship was suddenly talking, but what was it trying to say? Operation Silent Fathom is now in full swing. The designated search area, the datum, is a 100-square-mile box of uncertainty. AP-8 Poseidon, call sign, Trident 1-1, flies a meticulous grid pattern overhead, methodically dropping a curtain of sonobuoys into the ocean. These are the advanced ears of the fleet, disposable underwater microphones that dangle hydrophones at various depths, listening. Some are passive, just listening for the sound of an engine or a propeller. Others are active, pinging out sonar pulses and listening for the echo. Below, the destroyer USS Farragut and the frigate USS Kaufman are mowing the lawn, sweeping the area with their powerful hull-mounted and towed-array sonar systems. Above them, MH-60R Seahawks dip their own sonars into the water, a painstaking process of dropping a transducer into the ocean, listening for a few minutes, then lifting it out and flying to a new position. This is a three-dimensional chess game against an invisible opponent in an environment designed to hide him. The problem is the noise. Every commercial vessel, and there are hundreds, creates a massive acoustic shadow. The Ghadir could be hiding beneath an oil tanker, its own signature completely masked. The seabed is a graveyard of wrecks and rock formations, each one capable of producing a false sonar return, a false positive, that has to be investigated, costing precious time. The sonar operators are straining, their eyes burning from staring at waterfall displays, trying to distinguish the signature of a 120-ton submarine from the sound of a migrating whale or the engine of a fishing dhow. It's an impossible task. The hunter is now the hunted, and the pressure is immense. Meanwhile, at Fort Meade, Maryland, the headquarters of the National Security Agency, the agency's best cryptanalysts are in a race against time. The strange beacon from the Stout is their only lead. It's not a standard military signal. The data packets are malformed. The encryption is non-standard. It's almost as if the system was damaged and is just firing off random bits of its last memory buffer. But there's a pattern to the noise, a rhythm. After hours of running it against every decryption algorithm they have, a junior analyst has a breakthrough. He stops trying to decrypt it as a message. Instead, he treats it as a raw data file. He converts the binary code not into text, but into sound. What comes through his headphones is the sound of chaos, the unmistakable, terrifying shriek of an incoming torpedo, the groan of tortured metal, the roar of a massive explosion, and then the sound of water flooding a compartment. It is the last-second audio recording from the Stout's own sonar room. It is a 4-second recording of its own death, a ghost talking from a watery grave. The information is relayed to the Pentagon and NAVCENT immediately. It's confirmation of the torpedo attack, but it offers no clues as to the Gadir's location. The search continues. On the world stage, the situation is spiraling out of control. The White House maintains a public silence, a move designed to avoid panic and give military planners time. But behind the scenes, the diplomatic channels are on fire. The U.S. ambassador to the United Nations is preparing to present the SIGINT evidence of an unprovoked Iranian attack at an Emergency Security Council meeting. Oil futures have spiked 20% on the news of a maritime incident in the Strait. Tehran, for its part, issues a furious denial through its state-run media, calling the disappearance of the American warship a suspicious act of sabotage, and warning Washington against any hasty and aggressive miscalculations. The world is on a knife's edge. Then, the NSA analysts, still poring over the final sonar recording from the Stout, find something else. Something they missed in the chaos of the explosion. In the half-second before the torpedo hit, the Stout's advanced sonar processed one final return. The primary target was the Gadir, a small, clear contact. But behind it, lurking in its acoustic shadow, was a second contact. It was larger, quieter, and its hydrodynamic signature was unlike any known Iranian or regional submarine. The Gadir-class submarine, the piranha that had seemingly started this crisis, was not alone. It had an escort. A much bigger, much stealthier shark was in the water. Link. The discovery of a second, unidentified submerged contact changes the entire strategic calculus. This was not a simple, deniable ambush by a rogue Iranian submarine commander. This was a coordinated, multi-asset operation. The question that explodes in the Pentagon War Room is, who does the second submarine belong to? The signature doesn't match an Iranian Kilo class, their largest and most capable subs. The acoustic profile is more advanced, quieter. Speculation runs rampant. A Russian Yasin class? A Chinese Sheng class? Both nations have vested interests in challenging U.S. naval supremacy and testing their response capabilities. The presence of either in a coordinated attack with Iran would represent an escalation so severe it's almost unthinkable. A new, chilling hypothesis takes shape. The Gadir was not the primary actor. It was the bait. Its mission was to execute the attack on the USS Stout, a loud, undeniable act of aggression that would force an immediate and massive U.S. Navy ASW response. The second, more advanced submarine's mission was purely intelligence gathering. It was there to remain hidden, to hang back and silently observe, to record everything, to document the American response protocols, their search patterns, the exact frequencies of their sonars, the deployment speed of their rapid response assets. They sacrificed a pawn to get a detailed look at the King's entire defense strategy. The loss of the USS Stout and its crew was not just an attack. It was the price of admission for an unprecedented electronic intelligence coup. This presents an impossible dilemma for the president. Option A is to proceed with a retaliatory strike against Iranian naval bases, holding them accountable for the Gadir's attack. This would almost certainly trigger a full-scale war in the Middle East, a conflict that could destabilize the entire global economy. It's a clear, decisive response, but it plays directly into the trap. ignoring the larger, more dangerous player still hiding in the shadows. It would be a response born of anger, not strategy. Option B is to retask Operation Silent Fathom, to shift the hunt from the Iranian Ghadir to the unknown second submarine. This requires acknowledging, at least internally, that a second, possibly major global power was complicit in the attack. Trying to hunt a state-of-the-art Russian or Chinese nuclear submarine is infinitely more difficult and dangerous than hunting an Iranian diesel boat. Any hostile engagement could trigger a direct superpower conflict, the likes of which the world has not seen since the Cold War. To act is to risk World War III. To not act is to show the world that a U.S. warship can be sunk as part of an intelligence-gathering operation, and America's response will be to simply absorb the blow. It's a choice between a regional war and a global catastrophe. As the sun rises over the Strait of Hormuz, the frantic search continues. The men and women of the Fifth Fleet continue their hunt, unaware of the terrifying strategic context that has now enveloped their mission. They are hunting for a single Iranian submarine, a tangible enemy they can fight. But the real enemy, the ghost in the machine that orchestrated this entire event, is likely already slipping away into the deep, cold waters of the Arabian Sea, its memory banks filled with the U.S. Navy's most sensitive ASW secrets. The attack on the USS Stout was not the opening move of a war. It was a checkmate, delivered before the opponent even knew the game had begun. The ship is gone, the crew is lost, and the most powerful navy on Earth has been left staring at a ghost on their sonar screens. A ghost that now knows all of their secrets. This entire incident has now escalated from a tactical disaster to a strategic nightmare. The immediate question is no longer just about finding a missing ship or avenging its crew. It's about how the United States responds to a sophisticated, multi-layered act of war designed to cripple its military advantage. So the question we leave you with is this. Faced with a deniable attack from one nation and the invisible hand of another, what is the correct strategic response? Retaliation? Restraint? Or a complete re-evaluation of who the real enemy is? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you want to stay on the front line of breaking geopolitical analysis, make sure you subscribe to Breaking the Front and hit the notification bell. We'll be tracking this story as it develops. Stay safe.